For over 50 years, Reverend Colleen Koppert Holby has shared God's love with children. God's children, Reverend Holby calls them, who often call her the Rev. Others say she's a tenacious servant, an irenic spirit, a stateside missionary, a wonderful friend. As Director of Pastoral Care at the Children's Village in New York, where Reverend Holby has served since 1978, and as a lifelong advocate for the ministry of Young Life, she is ultimately a woman of unrelenting love for society's most vulnerable kids. Reverend Holby's own childhood was not invulnerable to hardship. The youngest of 4 children, she was born in rural Ohio, where her parents farmed their own land until the Depression took its toll and their farm was lost. The family moved on to work as tenant farmers. Only a year later, this home and all its contents were also lost, destroyed in a fire. In the midst of this tumultuous time, Reverend Holby experienced what she today calls the most important event in her life. During a Sunday evening service in a small country church, she responded to God's call and became a Christian. She was 9 years old. Only 2 years later, Reverend Holby's parents divorced, and she moved with her mother to Mansfield, Ohio. In Mansfield, Reverend Holby first experienced the church as the central spiritual and communal force in her life. With her mother, she attended Grace Brethren Church, where the pastor and the body of believers inspired her to commit her life to helping others. By age 12, she had started her first ministry for kids, a Bible study in her garage with tree stumps for chairs. It was on a Sunday evening in the sanctuary of Grace Brethren that Reverend Holby learned of Wheaton College. Wheaton's ambassador? The Women's Glee Club on their spring tour. Impacted by their testimony, Reverend Holby decided that Wheaton was the best possible place for a Christian person to study. She applied and entered Wheaton in the fall of 1951. Wheaton College proved to be all that Reverend Holby had anticipated. She quickly made friends, lifelong friends, chose a major, sociology, and a minor, philosophy. Maintaining her childhood commitment to serving others, she also volunteered at a local hospital. Then she discovered Young Life. Her Sunday evenings quickly became devoted to Young Life training. These convicting sessions were often packed with up to 200 Wheaton students. Reverend Holby soon began working as a Young Life leader with a local Young Life group. She spent the first of many summers at Young Life's Frontier Ranch in Colorado, where, in conversation with fellow counselors, she began to consider the potential of Young Life for urban youth. After graduating from Wheaton in 1955, Reverend Holby became a Young Life staff member and received her M.A. in theology. For the next 15 years, she devoted herself to the work of Young Life, making the gospel accessible to teens and their families in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, and finally in 1970 in Boston, where she met John Duncan Holby, a widower from Pleasantville, New York. The two fell in love, married, and returned to Pleasantville, where they both served in their home church, and Reverend Holby became a member of the extended Holby family. In 1978, Reverend Holby learned that the Children's Village, a residential treatment center for troubled youth in Dobbs Ferry, New York, needed an assistant chaplain. This position seemed a perfect fit for Reverend Holby's interests and experience. It also spoke to her deepening sense of God's concern for the poor and disadvantaged. She applied, got the job, and began the work that she continues to this day, providing a spiritual foundation for at-risk kids and creating an environment where traumatized young people can learn to be persons of faith and hope. One of Reverend Holby's earliest supporters was the Reverend Benedict Groeschel, the Catholic writer and lecturer who served as chaplain at the Children's Village during the 1960s. God writes straight with crooked lines, Reverend Groeschel likes to say. This motto helped sustain Reverend Holby in her chaplaincy. through her ordination in the United Church of Christ in 1980, and through the grief that followed the sudden death of her husband in 1982. With the loss of her husband, Reverend Holby's familial roots at the Children's Village deepened. As a stable figure for those who have few safe relationships, she works to rebuild broken spirits. "I see the value in you," she strives to tell each and every young man she encounters. Along with her associates, she conducts weekly Protestant chapel services, Bible studies, and Christian Holy Day observances, ensuring that all have access to spiritual formation in their personal faith. She facilitates special programs and brings in compelling speakers like former New York Knicks team captain Allen Houston, and inspiring Wheaton graduates, including Lisa Beamer and acclaimed soprano Sylvia McNair. And Reverend Holby raises money every year to send 30 Children's Village residents to Young Life Camp, a place they call paradise, which provides exactly what they need: a living community of transforming love rooted in God's presence. In addition to this ongoing work, Reverend Holby leads seminars on topics such as forgiveness and is the moderator for an interfaith group of clergy and religious leaders. And always, Reverend Holby's unrelenting love and prayers sustain kids, God's kids. For her lifelong commitment to love and minister to some of society's most vulnerable children, the Wheaton College Alumni Association is pleased to honor the Reverend Colleen Koppert Holby as the 2011 Alumna of the Year for her distinguished service to society.